Welcome to the We Shape podcast.
Hey, girl.
Hey, another week, another episode coming to you live from the We Shape headquarters. I'm just kidding. Fulfilling my dreams as a news anchor. I'm just kidding.
You must have had a long day today. You kind of sound quirky already.
When we record these in the afternoon, you guys know that I go down.
Yeah. It's almost 3 p.m.
Yeah.
It's bedtime.
You guys, we're so
Okay,
sleepy.
We're so sleepy all the time. Okay, so I want to check in. How's everyone doing?
I'm doing really good.
Yeah. We're just wrapping up a crazy week and then about to take a family vacay. So looking forward to
That'll
the
be
vacay
so
for
fun.
sure.
Yeah, I know.
Where are you guys going?
We're going to Nashville.
Heck yeah, you're going to go to Dollywood, right?
We're going to go to Dollywood.
Love
My
it.
brother and his wife just moved there, so we're going to go say
And I've
hello.
had a lot of people say, "What is Dollywood?" And I look at them straight in the eyes and say, "It's Dolly Parton's theme park."
You
Actually,
gotta go.
I believe what you mean to say is I beg your pardon. Okay, we're done. I'm done. I'm leaving the show.
We're
I'm
Dolly.
out.
Yeah.
We're Dolly stands.
We'll be in Dollywood. See you guys later.
No, I'm excited about our guest today. I'm going to jump right in. This
Yes.
is actually one of my favorite topics. We're going to be talking a lot about intuitive eating and body image and guilt and all the things. And, you know, I feel like I've been really unraveling a lot of this stuff myself. And what I've noticed is that it's very difficult to kind of face it. But then once you face it, like the amount of power and liberation you get to like remove it's like all this like energetic weight that sits in on your shoulders of like thinking about food all the time. And we just don't even understand how the system and the information that we're given is in so many ways like really toxic.
Absolutely.
And there's some layers to this one.
Yeah, there's
we
some
made some
layers.
jokes before the call, and I was like, ha ha, a little bit of deep pain there. Let me
We're just going to face a lot of pain.
Oh, it's gonna be fun.
No, but it's helpful to talk about because I tell everyone a lot, like in my own experience, just having awareness and opening the door to some of the beliefs and the narratives are the very first step, and often really the biggest step in allowing a different story to take place. And that different story actually can be very liberating and very freeing. So I want to get started.
Let's do it.
I'm going to pass the computer
pass it over,
over
the
because
baton.
you're the bio
I'm the
queen.
bio reader. That's what
Yeah.
it's my special job. I'm so excited today. We have Saskia with us, and she is an intuitive eating, body image, and mindfulness coach who helps women start eating without guilt and shame and step into a totally new way of relating to food, their body, and their worth. Saskia seeks to highlight the oppressive nature of diet culture and supports her clients to listen to and trust their inner wisdom of their bodies. And with that, we get to welcome Saskia. Hi, Saskia.
Hi.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
We're so excited. And you're with us from Australia, so thank you it's like the morning there right now, right?
It is. It's the morning for me, so I'm fresh.
It's actually the morning of tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm living in your future. Exactly. It's very good here.
Yeah.
Is it beautiful there? Is the future bright, Saskia?
It's so bright. I mean, not as bright as going to Nashville, but it's bright. It's bright.
Oh, we're so happy to have you.
Welcome. Well, I always like to start with better understanding our guest story. So maybe we could just open by, we'd love to know how you got to where you are, how you're doing the work what brought you into the work that you're doing. So maybe just start by sharing your story, and then I'm sure this conversation will have a lot of layers that will unfold for sure.
Yeah, always a lot of layers to this story. I think I had, I would say, a pretty good relationship with food in high school, which is surprising because I know that's when a lot of people start dieting. I didn't have a great relationship with my body, but food was quite good. But when I finished school, I lost a pretty significant amount of weight, and I spent the next 20 plus years maintaining that, or trying to maintain that, which meant I had a very, very restrictive relationship with food, a very intense relationship with exercise. And I think it really, most of the time that I did it, I was doing it myself, as in I would discover a diet and do that myself. And I was very strict with myself. But when it got really bad was when I joined a gym and I started an 8-week challenge. And this was the first time where I was really given an eating plan. There was weighing myself daily. There was you'll know the names of it, but, standing on one of those machines that spins around and tests your body fat and gives you all the other measurements. And I just became then incredibly obsessive. And then I got myself a personal trainer who also gave me nutrition support, and I started macro counting. And that for me was when I really hit diet bottom. I was so obsessive about hitting all the marks, and I was weighing my baby spinach at that stage. And
oh my God.
yeah, it was intense. And I had a little girl at the time, and I remember doing this meal prep on a Sunday and seeing her there in her high chair eating with me kind of weighing out my baby spinach and thinking, something about this is just not right. Like, this isn't healthy, even though I was never diagnosed with an eating disorder. All my friends just thought that I was incredibly healthy. I was always like Saskia, the healthy one, Saskia, the fit one. And so that kind of sparked something in me, that moment with my daughter. And then when I turned 40, I remember having this experience of being my birthday, looking at myself in the mirror, not in a body checking way, but very much in a like looking in my own eyes kind of way, and thinking, it's my birthday today. I've got this birthday cake. I better have a small slice. And if I have a small slice now, I'll have to have something different for dinner, and I can't have it tomorrow. And just these thoughts. And suddenly I just had this overpowering sense of this is not good. I cannot be doing this when I'm 50. Something has to change. Like, I have to do something different, and I cannot continue doing this for another year, 5 years, 10 years. And so then after that, I went on a exploration as to what I could do differently. I mean, I'd never even heard of intuitive eating. I'd heard of every other diet, but I had never heard of intuitive eating. So I started working with a coach, and as I started reading about intuitive eating and learning more, I was just like, my mind was blown, and I just became so interested in this work that then I kind of changed the whole trajectory of my career and retrained as an intuitive eating counselor and as a life coach. And now I work with women, helping them heal their relationship with food and their body.
It's beautiful.
That's amazing. You know what pops up for me real quick? I just want to say this out there. I want to personally apologize on behalf of all the coaches for running weight loss challenges and teaching people nutritional things, because this is a big part of my past was doing those sort of things, and at the time you think you're helping people, but as time goes on you start to realize, oh my God, we are not helping people. You're making people either more neurotic, or if they don't accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to set forth, you're giving people more reasons to be shameful and want to kind of curl up in a ball and feel bad about themselves. So anyways, I want to like personally apologize, because I know that I've been a part of that system before, and I think it's something that we need to highlight, and we need to make sure that people realize that this isn't all positive impact. There's a lot of negative impact happening.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I want to personally apologize too, because I know that I shared all my quote unquote tips with all my friends as well. I was always the person giving out advice about how to lose weight. So yeah.
We really do think that it's the healthy way to do things. Yeah. I mean, I remember, like, you guys know we were all together at the time, but like when we would do like our cheat day on the weekends, and like we were like, cheat day, like we're so healthy during the week. I was fantasizing about food. I was like writing things down in my notes app in my phone of like, I'm going to eat that on Saturday. It's going to be so good. We spend the whole day eating, making ourselves essentially sick, and thinking like, I'm crushing it. Like, I'm so healthy right now.
But because everyone around you is doing it, you're like, absolutely, this is normal.
This is great.
And now we look back and go, oh dear God.
Well, and that's the piece I think is really important to highlight. You mentioned something powerful, is like if you're not doing anything like this, and you haven't been exposed to it, or you haven't ever tried it, then you're constantly feeling bad about yourself because you're not like the people who are achieving.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're the person who's achieving, people are rewarding you, but they're rewarding the dysfunction. And it doesn't, people don't realize we're all just praising dysfunction in a lot of ways. And it takes a lot of courage to step back and examine that and go, this is not working. I need to do something different and try something different. So, kudos to you on that side of things too.
Yeah. And you know what you're saying about rewarding dysfunction, the most compliments I got about my body were at the times when my eating was most disordered, which is why complimenting, or quote unquote complimenting weight loss is such an issue, because you just don't know what you're, as you said, rewarding. And it was an incredibly dysfunctional relationship with food. And I was like, okay, that's what I get rewarded for. Let's do more of that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I think there's something I really want to highlight as well that you said about intuitive eating. You're like, I had heard of every other diet. Like, you've heard of all of them. They're in the magazines, they're on the cover, whatever, celebrities doing this diet, that diet. You're like, I've heard of that one, I've heard of that one. But intuitive eating, which arguably is how we really are all meant to eat. And as children, like, I'm hungry, I eat food. I need energy, I have a snack, whatever. Like, that's not at all intuitive. Like, you need to be coached and taught how to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I was laughing the other day. Even the idea, I even think it's weird that we have this idea of 3 meals a day. Like, it just, the fact that we like eat around, like, by the clock is kind of weird to me. It's like we're basically, what we're trained to do is look for signals outside of us that tell us what to do with our body. And it's like, whoa. Basically, what we should be doing, in my opinion, is looking internally and feeling internally and using that as our metric for how we make decisions. And if you think about how we work with young children, it's all centered around, don't listen to yourself, here are the rules, this is what we do. It's always taking them away from that. Like, I was laughing even the other day because I was about to eat dinner and my 5-year-old said, "Can I have this popsicle?" And I went to say, absolutely not, it's about to be dinner. And then I stopped for a second and I said, why are you going to say no? And then I told her, I said, some of us are going to enjoy those popsicles after we eat this dinner. If you decide that you feel like you'd like to enjoy it before dinner, that will be your choice. But a lot of us are probably going to have some after. So what works better for you? And I watched her and she sat with it and she said, I'd rather have it when everyone else has it. I said, that's your choice. But I took the power out of the food and out of the rules, right? Because the more we say no, the more power I was like, how do I de-escalate this power struggle that's about to happen right now so that we don't continuously have these debates around food? Because it's just, first of all, it's obnoxious to be dealing with that as a parent all the time. And it's like my need to control every little thing is just, I'm annoyed with myself. But like, second, what message is that giving her? It's like, I don't want the foods to be labeled good or bad. I just wanted her to recognize that, like, we're about to eat dinner and like, I'm going to have mine after, but if you think you should have yours before, like, who said that the other way? Like, who made that rule up?
Well, this brings up, I think
she looked at me like I was like, who's my mom? Where did my mom go?
yeah.
Who are you?
This brings up the theme I heard you saying beforehand, right? You said the phrase "more is caught than taught," which is fantastic because
that's a Pops
my
phrase.
father-in-law, Pops, says "more is caught than taught." Such a beautiful phrase, and I think it's a good place to maybe examine the experience you had and the experience you're having with clients. Is, I think that oftentimes people think that they just show up in the world and they're just making these decisions out of free will, but most of the time it's an inherited pattern that we're conditioned to do, and we haven't spent the time to examine whether or not it's serving us. So,
well, yeah, I
mean,
mean, honestly, when you were sharing your story, that was kind of one of my first questions is what prompted the weight loss after high school? Like, what happened in your life that made you decide to or lose weight?
So pick a question and answer.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question first. I think probably it was a really, what it's like when you finish school. It's a very transitional time. Friendships were changing. I wasn't quite sure what was happening. You were going from this sort of safety of school. So I feel like when I look back on it now, it was probably an attempt for me to control something that I thought that I could when everything else felt a bit out of control. So that's what I think now. I mean, there may have been other layers to it, but that's the main thing that stands out for me. And then in answer to the question about what happens, when we grow up, absolutely. I mean, that's where for most of my clients, the main messaging around food came from. And of course, it's added to over time. I often explain it like a backpack. It's like we start off with this empty backpack, which has no food rules in it when we're initially born. And then over time, all these different rules just start to kind of go into the backpack and fill up and mean that we're carrying around something very heavy all the time. So it might have been things that your parents said, it might have been something that your grandma said, it might have been something that one of the teachers at school said, and then friends, and then things you read in magazines and things you heard from other books. And so, yeah, it all adds up over time. And one of the things I often do with my clients is get them to write all of their food rules down, and we examine, where did you first learn that? Where were you first told, that carbohydrates were bad? And my food rules was, it was a mess. It was pages and pages long. And so many of them contradicted the other, because when I started dieting, I was in the low fat phase. But then, of course, I did all these other things and they contradicted it. So in the low fat phase, skim milk was what I was meant to be having. But then when I was in my whole foods phase, it was all about not having anything processed and having whole milk. And then in my non-dairy phase, I was having soy milk. And so I just couldn't make a decision about anything.
And then you're like, soy milk has phytoestrogens. Yeah. Now you can't have that. You're just like, I'm reading my list and I'm just going to drink water at the end of the day.
There's no winning. That's the thing, is the goalposts are always moving in diet culture.
Always moving. And so it just became so difficult to eat. And so when you break down those rules and you actually start thinking, where did this come from? A lot of the time, the big messaging we have around food and bodies comes from our families.
Yeah. I just have to say one thing really quick. Yeah. It is pretty funny when you think, like, for this decade, this was the diet. Then this, and then we always think we found the one.
It's the next thing.
But like, we don't think about it as like this. There's going to be another one. We're like, no, we figured it out in 2023. We're done. And it's like, no. But look at history. It's never over. And that is maybe a question a topic we can go into at some point, because I do want to talk more about sort of the modeled behaviors that we pick up, and but just this idea, like, how do we know that intuitive eating isn't just another fad as well, right? Like, so because I'm like, how do we know we're on the right path for our own physical and emotional well-being? I think there would be, I would have that, and maybe intuitive eating is the next popular thing, but maybe it's the thing that we need to be going to, because it is the like most emotionally and physically healthy thing for us. But I think it's probably important to ask that question too, given historically how there's just different, things that become popular.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it is funny how diets do just change over time. I think it's a bit like fashion. It's like this is something, and then you look back and think, oh, we wouldn't wear that anymore. That's weird.
Never.
So yeah, it's like definitely like that. I think there's a few things to say here. The first thing is, intuitive eating is very, very, very misunderstood. And if you go to Instagram and look up the intuitive eating hashtag, it is a mess in there. It is a lot of people talking about intuitive eating for weight loss, or intuitive eating as in your cheat day, because that's being intuitively led one day a week. So there's lots of stuff in there that's quite confusing. And so a lot of people do just think, wow, well, intuitive eating is just another diet. Or they think that intuitive eating is just eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full, which is really, that's kind of just a diet in a way, because it's still got quite strong rules around it. So the first thing is, I think that people can turn it into a diet if they don't understand it properly. But then in relation to the question of, is it just another fad? I think the main difference with intuitive eating is that it isn't based on anything external. So all the other diets out there are based on some set of external rules, whether that's about calories or macros or the time you can eat or the portion sizes. This is about coming back to the inner wisdom of your body. So this is something that looks after your physical, your mental, your emotional health, because we have all the answers inside of us and we just unlearn how to eat over time. So I don't think it can be a fad when it is what our body is telling us. So we are the expert of our own body. I don't tell my clients how to eat. I'm leading them home again to their body. And I think that is the difference. And there's also a huge amount of research around intuitive eating. So there are over, last time I looked, there are over something like 160 research studies about intuitive eating, which show that it increases self-esteem, it increases positive body image. So there are all these things around it which we actually know are supportive of our emotional health and our mental health, psychological health. So that would be my answer.
That's helpful to understand sort of like all the different ways that intuitive eating could be misunderstood. And so I think that's really important information for us and also for our listeners, because if we're talking a lot, we talk a lot about intuitive eating here. And if they're going on social media, they could be led down a path that might not really stem from the true intention of intuitive eating. So I appreciate the clarity around that for sure. That's really meaningful. I'd love to go back.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that before you move on?
Yeah.
So I love what you said. I'm going to echo what you said there. I think it's really important to make sure that when we say intuitive eating, we understand what that means, right? And I'm hearing you say that intuitive eating brings us back to deeply listening to ourselves and letting that be the wisdom by which we guide our nutritional choices through. That being said, as I have continued to grow as a person and develop a better connection with myself, you start to see how few people have spent a lot of time really developing a connection with themselves. And so how do you bridge the gap between someone who's, I'm doing intuitive eating and they just allow themselves to eat whatever they want and they're guided by, satiation and things like that, versus someone who's really actually listening to their body and really saying, hey, this is what my body's, wanting and how I feel afterwards, et cetera. Like, how do you bridge the gap between those two different things? Because I think somebody could tell themselves, I'm intuitively eating, and be completely misleading themselves.
I think that's a good question. I would say in the early stages of intuitive eating, it is very important to give yourself a lot of freedom in those early stages. And it's certainly, I do think a lot of people think that, they're going to have freedom in the early stages and then something's going to happen and they're going to have rules put in place. There aren't rules that are put in place, but I think you brought something up really important, which is intuitive eating is also about how this food makes your body feel. So that is another question you're asking yourself. How do I want to feel after this meal? When I just ate that, how do I feel now? And is that how I want to feel? So that's kind of the question as well. It's eating knowing that, does this make me feel good? After this, do I feel how I want to feel? Do I feel energized? Do I feel satisfied? And so I think that is an important part, is how does it make me feel? Because it's not going to make you feel good to eat apples all day, every day. And it's not going to make you feel good to eat chocolate all day, every day. So it's that sort of question that you're asking.
It's less about like, what do I want to taste? What am I using to satiate something? Because for me, like I'm like I guess you could call it a binge eater and an emotional eater at heart, right? And so I would, reach for something when I feel like, oh, there's a feeling, maybe I'll have a cookie and stuff that feeling down. And I could see someone really easily saying, oh, I'm intuitively eating. But really, if you examine that on a deeper level, it's me going, oh, let me like mask my pain with something outside of myself, because I'm not asking the question, how do I really want to feel with what I'm eating? I'm asking, what do I want that sounds satiating to, in a more deep way, numb that pain?
Yeah, look, it's a complicated one, this one, because emotional eating is something that is really demonized in diet culture. And sometimes eating can be supportive for us. There are times when we eat in a way that mightn't be supportive for us, but eating and food is something that can be comforting, and it can be one of the things that we have in our toolbox. So if it is the only thing that you have in your toolbox and the only thing that you're using when you're feeling overwhelmed is cookies, that mightn't feel very supportive. But I even noticed recently that I was feeling really angry, and I went into the kitchen and I was like, I just want corn chips. And I didn't even eat that many, but there was something about the kind of physical crunching down on this corn chip that actually felt really good. And I was like, oh,
I love that.
So I think this is one of the things that happens to people is they get really scared about ever eating when they're feeling emotional. And eating is emotional. Like, there are lots of times we eat to celebrate, we eat to comfort. There are parts of it which are emotional. So it's a complicated, or maybe I should say it's nuanced. So it's not just this thing of let's never eat for emotional eating, for emotional reasons. That is part of intuitive eating. And it is also part of intuitive eating to eat simply for pleasure sometimes, and simply because we like the way it tastes sometimes. So there are lots of different reasons why we might eat, and emotions and pleasure may be some of those.
You know, it was funny when
We're all so much to say. I love it. We're like jumping in.
I'm going to go eat a damn cookie right now.
when you and I were first, I mean, this is what we've been doing is intuitive eating
I was going to
since we
say
stopped
our
the diet.
experience.
Yeah.
Like, share your experience of your own personal journey.
Okay, one person talk at a time over here.
You go, girl.
Well, mine's short. I'm a pretty speedy talker, so I'll say, like, my experience has been in my little intuitive eating journey, which has been less than a year now, really. Is that I did kind of go off, God forbid, off the rails in the beginning. There was no, rules. I had taken my food rules out of my backpack, ditched them on the sidewalk, and said, I'm not doing this anymore. And so for a while at the grocery store, I was buying things that I normally wouldn't buy. I would tell myself, you're not allowed to have that or whatever. And so I bought those things. I ate those things. It was really fun. I enjoyed that. My body fluctuated a bit here. It fluctuated a bit there. And then over time, through kind of its own natural process, I sort of started reaching for different things. And I'm just kind of allowing that to happen. And so for me, that experience is like the pendulum kind of swung a little extra far into a space that felt, oh, these are foods that are bad. I'm not supposed to have them. But I'm like, I'm allowed to do that. I'm going to do it. And then it kind of swung back to center, I want to say, where I feel like I choose foods now because they do make me feel satiated and are palatable. And also they make me feel good after I eat them.
Yeah. No, I mean, similar. I think that when you go down this path, I was a huge, I was similar to you. Like, I was like, it has to be fit in this category. I did a lot of, I would say, disordered eating disguised as wellness. That was my mode of operation. And so there was a lot of praise for that. We were running a company that was promoting healthy foods, stuff like that. And so I kind of thought, like, I can't break the rules. It just felt so uncomfortable to break the rules. And so one of the things I started doing kind of naturally, which I just am now realizing, is when I go to eat something and then a thought comes in my mind, I actually just stop and then I just try to check in and say, is that a rule? Or are you basing this decision on how you feel right now? And just that pause, most of the time it's a rule. And then I go, you just have the damn bagel for breakfast. But it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like just taking a moment to pause and understand where the thought is coming from, for me personally, has been really helpful, because most of the time those thoughts are not coming from a place that's really derived from an intuitive, my body's going to feel good when I eat this. I'm going to feel like I have some energy to start my day. It's usually coming from a rule. Mm-hmm. And it's actually really liberating to get past that fear of, like, what happens if I break the rules? I was even telling you last night that it just is so freeing to not worry about that stuff anymore.
It takes a lot of mental bandwidth to constantly manage and maintain and deal with the emotional consequences of these rules.
I literally cannot even believe how much weight I used to carry around food rules. And I can't believe I used to do that.
I love what you said about the backpack, because, like, it's a heavy backpack.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, yeah.
Write down everything. I was thinking about that when you said that. I'm like, oh my God, it would be pages.
Even if you're not following the rules,
Yeah, I might not be
you're
following
just,
them.
it's another layer of guilt. So it's like you were never winning in that situation.
Yeah.
The backpack was just getting heavier and heavier. Whether you were following the rules, whether you were breaking the rules, it didn't matter. Your mind is just clogged with toxic belief systems that you don't even realize, because it's just inch by inch, and then it's validated by everything around you, so then it's normalized, so then you never question any of it, and then it's just like this whole downward spiral.
I think I would like to go back too to what you said about your experience with your daughter. And I know that you and I have had an experience along those lines as well, when we watched your daughter get bigger and start noticing things we were doing and going, oh no, this isn't good. She's kind of picking up what we're doing with food and the way we're dieting together and et cetera. And rather than initially say, this is a bad call, let's stop doing it, we're like, well, we'll just be secretive about it. We'll just like
we had
talk
our
about our
secret
diets
diets.
in like behind a closed door. And we're like, wait, this is so messed up.
No, I remember the day we were talking about something, we're going off, and we look over and she's just staring at us, like just staring at us. And then she went and played or something. I said, Nina, we got to talk. I said, girl, we got to do this in my room now.
Let's be secret.
We cannot.
Let's use secret language while we're talking about our disordered eating.
Code speak. Yeah. But
We cannot talk about our diets in front
We
of Ellie.
understand that we're disordered, but we're going to keep doing it
But
as
what
long
was
as our kid
weird-
doesn't see it.
But what was weird is actually we did not understand that we were.
No.
But there was something inside of us that said we knew we were suffering from these belief systems on some level, that we knew on some level we just didn't want her to suffer from them. So we knew enough. But like it wasn't, it was such a crazy experience to look back on and be like, we'll just go close the door. Like, oh, Tyler, can you watch her while we go do our diet?
we're going to go talk about how we're not going to eat white foods, you know?
Yeah.
But you had a similar experience. And so like you're raising a daughter. I don't know how many children you have, but you're definitely raising a daughter. You mentioned her. Like, how do you model intuitive eating? And do you feel like she's picking up on that? How is that working for her?
Yeah, so I've got one daughter and she's nearly 9. And when she was little, I was like, my rules were so strict. I mean, I'll be really honest that in that phase, I would judge other people for what they fed their kids as well. I remember seeing someone give their kids like a chocolate bar and thinking, oh, that's just terrible. And I used to get angry at my husband for bringing home too many sweet things for her, or like buying her a cookie when they were out. And then,
I mean, I karate chopped a Starbucks barista one time when they tried to hand my toddler a cake pop. I'll admit that.
Straight up, like
was
karate chop,
It was
like
an
hand
air
down
chop.
on the
It
arm.
was an air chop. I didn't make contact with the barista.
They're probably looking for you somewhere. Like there's a wanted poster
Yeah.
on their
But
Starbucks window.
There was a like, I had no control of my arm, but it was an air chop. But
You've
I
been
feel you.
traumatized.
Yeah.
I need the CCTV footage of that immediately, because I've got a great image of you just air chopping.
You've been 86.
So look, when I started doing it, first of all, I was just doing it myself and kind of learning how to understand what was happening for me and improving my own relationship with food. But it's really had such an incredible impact on, first of all, the level of stress in our house around food. Like eating and meals and food and asking about food, it means that it's so much calmer in the house. There's less stress and tension around food and eating. And there's a sense that food is not good or bad or healthy and unhealthy. And I think her relationship with food now is so, I mean, I don't want to use the word healthy because that, you know, but it's calm. She has an easeful relationship with food. And I see such a difference in her than how I was when I was growing up. And I see a real difference in her and her friends too. So we had soccer training the other night. Well, I didn't. She had soccer training with a big group of 8 and 9-year-old girls. And I brought a bag of, I don't know what you'd call them in the US, snakes, you know, like jelly snakes.
Gummy worms.
Gummy worms,
Yeah.
gummy worms. And I bought them online, so I accidentally had this huge packet of them. And I opened them and said to the girls, you can have 2 each. And they literally basically attacked me. Like they just swarmed at me and kind of ripped these things out of this bag. And my daughter was standing there kind of staring at them like, whoa, this is just out of control. And I could hear one of the girls say, I'm never allowed these at home. And she was just so desperate to have them. And so this sense that when we prohibit kids from having food, when they get access to that food, they are going to feel really out of control around it. So yeah, there's a calmness around food in our house, and I feel calmer around it. And I feel like she's really empowered. She's really empowered to trust and listen to her own body. And that's what's so important for me. We're not creating a relationship with food that they have just today. This is how we are creating a relationship for her to have with food when she's 20 and 30 and into her adult life.
What a beautiful aspiration. I just want to repeat what you said. You said an easeful relationship.
Yeah.
What a beautiful way to look at this.
I took an exhale when I
yeah,
heard
yeah.
that.
When you say the word healthy, like you're saying, it's like bad or good, or like there's always this black and white thing that we get caught up in that makes us feel a certain way. But if we have this easeful relationship, that's like, oh, I'm gonna have the cookie and it's easy. Oh, I'm gonna eat this other thing that I feel like my body needs. Great, and it just feels a lot more. I could feel that in my body when you said that word easeful.
Yeah.
And just like creating the neutrality around it too. One of the next experiments I'm going to do, I haven't told you about this yet, so hopefully on the same page.
Are there lots of rules in this experiment?
Is I actually am going to put, like, when I want to start putting like all the food on the plate at dinner, including like a cookie or a sweet thing on there too, just so that it like this, I hate that power struggle between like the dinner comes first and then the sweet comes later. I don't know why that's been bothering me.
You gotta take those rules out of the backpack, right?
Do you know what I mean? But like just this idea of like, I feel like having the dessert after, it gives it like a different type of power. And then we use it as power during the meal to be like, well, if you do this, then you can do that.
And so it's like a reward mechanism.
Yeah.
So it becomes,
and so like I was actually going to begin experimenting with just putting it all on the plate and just do what your body says, and just let it be what it is.
Should I just eat my cookies before dinner?
I might try that personally at my own house.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something that is used a lot, is putting the dessert on the plate. We don't do that in our house just because we all kind of eat together, and I don't necessarily want my sweet thing on the plate with my dinner. But
your ice cream's like melting into your broccoli.
Exactly. But you're absolutely right, because if you say to kids, you need to eat all your vegetables before you have your dessert, well, it makes the vegetables seem like this horrible thing, this horrible, terrible thing that you have to eat in order to get the dessert. So it sets up, as you're saying, it sets up this like, wow, okay, dessert's like really this high level thing. And there's this, it's not neutralizing the food. So I think that can be really powerful.
Intended. It's well intended,
it
right?
is.
I want you to have nutrition, and then you can have a fun food. But it comes from still a place of don't listen to you, listen to me.
Well, it was funny. My parents came over for dinner last week, and my mom brought these really delicious cookies.
Oh, yeah.
And she was like, oh, can the kids, I brought these for the kids. I hope that was okay. I'm like, that's fine. And then the older one looked at me and said, can we have one now? And I said, sure. And I think this is a great experiment for parents, because they looked at me like, wait, what? Like, we can have this before the dinner that's on the way? And I said, yeah, enjoy. And so, like, if you're a parent and and a child asks you that and you say yes, and there's a big reaction like, I can, that's like pretty indicative that there's like a certain sort of labeling or judging or energy imbalance around food.
You started filling their backpack up from a young age,
yeah.
right?
So I was like, let me take the brick out of the backpack. Just go ahead and eat the cookie before dinner. But just to see their reaction. And so lately I've been trying to not have the rules and just teach moderation. And like, of course I don't want my kids eating 25 gummy bears before dinner because you're going to feel sick. But I'm also trying to take the power away of the gummy bear power, of the cookie power. I'm like, sure, you can have one now. Sure, no big deal.
Like a T-shirt that says "Cookie Power," though.
Yeah.
Just make a
We're
note of
gonna
that,
board it.
everyone.
but it's this power that we give it, and then children want that power, and so it's like I've been trying just to practice this more food neutral approach, so that it's not necessarily good or bad. And I have so many nutritious foods in my house, and some that are just more fun, and they're gonna get enough of both. So it is what it is.
And the reality is, like we said already, more is caught than taught. So if you want your kids to have an easeful relationship with food, you got to figure out how to have an easeful relationship.
Oh,
with
I
food
ate the
and be
cookie
that
too
in
before
front of them,
dinner. It was delicious.
So just another question I wanted to ask, because again, I feel like the most important part from my perspective of this intuitive eating is is teaching people how to have a connection with themselves, teaching people how to come back to themselves. So you'd mentioned unpacking beliefs, unpacking the backpack, so to speak, which, by the way, that's my favorite part of this conversation so far.
It's a great
because
one.
I think so many people think that growth is learning more, and most of the time it's unlearning what you've already learned and letting go of those expectations and rules you've put on yourself. But how do you help people come back to themselves?
There's lots of different ways. I think part of it is starting to become more aware of the inner sensations of your body. And some sensations in our bodies we wouldn't ignore. Like if we need to go to the bathroom, we would most likely, if we had access, go to the bathroom because we don't judge that. But when we have a sensation that comes up in our body of hunger, for example, we've probably been taught over time, am I really hungry? Maybe I should just have some water. Maybe I should just go for a little walk. We second guess it, or we ignore it, or we repress those feelings. So over time, it can be harder to sense them. So part of it is getting people to start being aware of how certain things show up for them in their body. So for example, I think a lot of people think that hunger only presents itself in their tummy, and that hunger for them will be like an empty feeling or a growling kind of feeling in their stomach. But actually, hunger can present itself in so many different ways, and it's quite unique for everybody. It might be, one of the biggest things is just thinking about food, having lots of thoughts about food. It might be that you start to notice a dip in your mood or a little bit of a headache, or some people get a pulling sensation in their throat. So there are all these different ways that it presents itself. So I think it's about people relearning all this stuff, because once upon a time we did know it. So we're unlearning a lot of stuff and we're relearning. And then what does fullness...
I don't know anybody who's grumpy when they're hungry. I don't know anybody in this table who's grumpy when they're hungry.
Definitely not us.
I've never been grumpy when I'm hungry. So yeah, same. And the same with fullness. How does fullness feel in your body, and what does pleasant fullness feel like in your body? What does unpleasant fullness feel like in your body? What does neutral fullness feel like in your body? So it's all about kind of this experimentation process where we're trying to understand what that feels like for us. And then what does satisfaction feel like in our body? How do we know we're satisfied by what we eat? And everyone describes that quite differently. One of my clients the other day, after reflecting on this for about a week, was like, I don't know, I kind of just want to dance, and she kind of just shook her body a bit. And for her, satisfaction feels like a little dance. And for some people, it feels like a kind of warm feeling, or it's like, that final piece of the jigsaw has just been put in and I feel complete after this eating experience. So I think a lot of it is becoming more aware of those sensations, learning what they mean to you, checking in with yourself more throughout the day. So being more mindful of how you're feeling during the day. And that's also like how you're feeling emotionally throughout the day. So checking in and saying, what's going on in this moment? Like, how do I feel? Am I feeling pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? What emotion is happening? So yeah, that kind of checking in is an important part of the process too.
And I think you're saying a big thing too. It's like it took us years to unlearn these feelings inside. So it's going to take us some time to learn how we can connect and feel with like what our body is telling us as well. And so I often like to look at these things as more of an experiment. Like, what would it feel like if I tried this? Or what would it feel like if I looked for this clue? Or what am I noticing about my body? Or what am I noticing about my thoughts? And I really appreciate this topic because I feel like food is such a messy, complicated, layered
necessary too.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
can't be like, oh, well, I have a hard time with that, so I'm just going to like be abstinent from it.
it's-
Like
Yeah.
you got to eat,
You
right?
cannot like go to the gym or something like plenty of that. But
Yeah.
you're gonna eat no
If
matter
you've got
what.
certain things
It's
you have a
gonna
hard time
happen.
with, you know, if you have a whatever, like you
Yeah.
can remove those things from your life, but this is not one of them.
Yeah, so it's messy, and I know we can talk about this for a long time. I know we have to wrap.
Can I ask just
We're
one
good.
more question?
You can
Please
ask
don't
one
go,
more.
Saskia.
I know. We
We
could keep going, but
I'm just curious. Like for people listening, we're talking about mindfulness in our relationship with food, and I can only imagine that somebody taking the time to ask themselves these questions, to examine their beliefs and their rules, and develop a deeper relationship with the subtle sensations of their body. I can only imagine this has a major impact on so many other areas of their lives. So I don't know if you've seen that, but I would love to just hear from you. Like when you work with clients, you know, are they just changing their relationship with food, or what else do you see happening?
Absolutely, so much more. It is so interesting to see what happens when you start understanding the inner messages of your body and what it's trying to say. And also when you start trusting yourself more, because it's not just about hearing the inner messages, it's also about trusting them. And that self-trust can start to filter into all different areas of your life. And you're also looking at so many different things, like things that come up with clients are around people pleasing and all or nothing thinking and perfectionism and binary thinking. And so once we start to
Are you describing all of our ailments at this table over here, or what's going on?
I feel really seen.
yeah, it's all of those. I mean, I feel seen too. Hands up. They're all in my past or still present. And so and so much of the time my clients will say, do you know, I literally thought this was just going to be about food and my body, but it is about so much more. And once you start to see something in your life that isn't serving you, and once you start to pull back the layers of the onion, you start to see all these other things that are not serving you. So for me, it really has been one of the biggest catalysts for further self-growth and personal development, because it made me see things, but it also allowed me all this time and space and mental energy that wasn't available to me before, because I was weighing my spinach. So
It takes up a lot of time.
yeah.
Oh man.
So,
Well, I really appreciate that. And you know, what you said is exactly what we say here at We Shape, which is people come to us for a workout and I'm always like, oops, surprise. It's so much more than a workout.
more.
So I really appreciate all the insights you had today. And I really hope that we can open people's minds and bring awareness to some of the freedom that is out there in their relationship with food. So thank you so much. We have had, clearly we don't want to wrap the episode because we just want to keep
I know,
going.
can I ask one? No, I'm just kidding. I have 100 more.
But we really appreciate your time. And tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at intuitively.eaten, and you can also go to my website, which is saskiacarr.com.
We love that. We'll put that in the show notes as well if people are looking to find you.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Awesome.
unpack my food rules backpack later today.
I
Take
love
off the
that.
backpack.
I
That
love
was the
that.
big
Thank you for
lesson,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Saskia. It was a fun conversation.
It's been
Take
a
good
pleasure.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening with us this week. We are really excited. We have a guest next week in person. Dr. Hortensia Jimenez is coming in to be with us. Really, really looking forward to share that episode with you guys. I hope you check it out next week. And shameless plug, please leave us a review if you enjoy listening to our podcast. We have been having so much fun. We would love to hear from you. We love to read reviews. We'd like emails. So email us at podcast@weshape.com. And we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.